Two gospel giants, two commanding voices, and a debate that has the entire gospel community buzzing. Shirley Caesar and Fred Hammond, icons who have shaped this genre for generations, recently clashed over gospel's future. Their fiery exchange left fans split, critics stunned, and the very direction of gospel music hanging in the balance. Stay with us, because what they revealed could completely shift the way you view this genre, and you won't believe the part that's fueling controversy across the internet. Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar aren't just familiar names in gospel, they are pillars. Their music has touched millions of hearts, and their influence has defined the sound and spirit of gospel for decades. But not long ago, the gospel scene erupted when these two living legends locked horns in a passionate debate about where the genre is headed. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what went down in their exchange, the points that stirred up such heated reactions, and insider takes on why this conversation is far deeper than a simple disagreement. This is about more than opinions. It's a clash of visions for gospel music itself. You'll be shocked at how fans reacted online, what other gospel artists had to say, and why this debate has sparked conversations that could potentially reshape the industry forever. And here's where things get really fascinating. This isn't just a generational rift, it's a philosophical one. Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar embody two different approaches to gospel. One firmly anchored in tradition, the other pushing forward with modern creativity. Their back and forth reveals a tension that has quietly simmered beneath the surface for years. So stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this isn't just another headline. It's a defining moment for gospel music, one that might even reshape the way the genre looks in the decades ahead. But to really understand why this debate shook the gospel world so deeply, you need to know the legacies of these two icons. Shirley Caesar, often crowned the First Lady of Gospel, has been a force in gospel music for over 60 years. From her early days in church choirs to becoming a multi-award-winning artist, Shirley's voice and message have inspired generation after generation. She's not only celebrated for her unmatched vocals, but also for her unwavering devotion to ministry and to gospel's traditional core. For Shirley, gospel isn't simply entertainment. It's a sacred mission, a vessel for worship, and a lifeline for believers everywhere. Fred Hammond, however, represents gospel's more contemporary wave, with his signature smooth vocals, bass-driven sound, and cutting-edge production. Fred helped pioneer a modern gospel vibe that fuses tradition with R&B and urban contemporary styles. His work with groups like Commission, along with his solo projects, consistently expanded gospel's boundaries. He's reached younger audiences without losing gospel's spiritual essence. Both Shirley and Fred command global respect, but they represent very different schools of thought. Shirley's sound is rooted in hymns, the raw emotion of choirs, and the time-honored spirit of the church. Fred, on the other hand, leans into urban rhythms, technology, and crossover appeal, yet still carries an unshakable message of faith. That difference is exactly what sets the stage for their recent face-off. A clash of philosophy, vision, and interpretation about what gospel should stand for in today's world. Through the years, both artists have openly shared their thoughts on the state of gospel music. In sermons, interviews, and online posts, Shirley has stressed staying faithful to gospel's spiritual and moral foundation, warning against trends that put style above substance. Fred, on the flip side, has embraced innovation, insisting on the need to reach the next generation and extend gospel's message far beyond church walls.
The clash between tradition and innovation has always been present in gospel music. But when two giants like Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar publicly share their opposing views, the conversation goes far beyond theory. It becomes deeply personal and the stakes rise dramatically. Their words influence fans, fellow gospel artists, and even the business side of the industry, from radio, spins and streaming numbers to award ceremonies and festival bookings. And here's where the twist comes in. Their latest exchange wasn't just about differing tastes in musical style. It grew into a direct conversation about the very heart and future of gospel music itself. What they said next set off social media firestorms, divided fan bases, and ignited discussions that are still ongoing. The spark that ignited this debate came during a widely talked about gospel music panel earlier this year. What was intended to be a celebration of gospel's timeless legacy and a conversation about its future quickly transformed into a battlefield of ideas once. Shirley Caesar and Fred Hammond took the stage. At first, things appeared friendly. Shirley Caesar opened the panel by honoring the pioneers of gospel names like Mahalia Jackson, James Cleveland, and Albertina Walker. She reminded the crowd of the foundation on which today's gospel music stands. Speaking with her trademark authority, Shirley declared that gospel was never meant to blend in with the world, but rather to call the world out of darkness. The audience erupted in applause, especially older fans who felt connected to her words. For Shirley, gospel has never been just a genre of music. It is a ministry, a sacred calling that must remain separate from mainstream culture. Then it was Fred Hammond's turn. With his calm, reflective tone, Fred also honored the legends who came before him, but he added that times have changed. His argument was that reaching the younger generation today requires evolution. If we don't adapt, Fred warned, we risk losing a whole generation to secular music. The message is the same, but the method has to change. His words were met with loud cheers from younger fans and contemporary artists in the audience. Though Shirley's supporters on stage appeared visibly uneasy, the tension rose when Shirley looked Fred directly in the eye and replied. She declared with conviction, "The gospel does not need to change. God's word is the same yesterday, today, and forever. When you mix it too much with the world, you risk weakening the anointing." Her voice carried the weight of 6 decades of ministry, and the audience could feel the authority in her stance. But Fred refused to back down. With respect but firmness, he countered, "Mother Shirley, with all due respect, young people today don't connect with choirs the way they used to. If we present the message through beats, bass, or collaborations, we aren't watering it down. We're communicating it in the language they understand." That was the turning point. The panel shifted from a polite discussion into a full-on debate. Shirley doubled down, warning that many modern gospel songs sound dangerously close to R&B or hip-hop and could easily be mistaken for secular tracks. She argued this blurred line might confuse listeners about what gospel truly represents. Fred, however, stood his ground. He pointed out that even Jesus used parable stories familiar to the culture of his time to convey truth. Why can't we do the same with music? Fred asked, leaving the audience torn, some nodding in agreement, others murmuring their disapproval. The debate didn't end on stage, it spilled far beyond it. Clips from their exchange went viral within hours, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Hashtags like #TeamFred and #TeamShirley quickly began trending as fans passionately defended their favorites. Some applauded Shirley for protecting the purity of gospel, while others praised Fred for pushing creative boundaries to keep the genre alive in a culture that's constantly evolving. Gospel radio hosts, bloggers, and YouTubers all chimed in, magnifying the discussion even further. But here's where things grew even more intense. Insiders later revealed that what the public heard on stage was only a fraction of the story. Behind closed doors, both artists were said to have exchanged even sharper words expressing frustrations the cameras never captured. When those private remarks eventually leaked, they only added fuel to the fire, leaving many in the gospel community wondering if this conflict was really just about music or if something deeper was at play. Once Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar's clash became public knowledge, the fallout was immediate and widespread. Fans all over the world rushed to social media, reacting with shock, excitement, and in some cases, outrage. Supporters were quick to pick sides. For days, hashtags like #TeamFred and #TeamShirley dominated Twitter's trending topics, with followers fiercely defending their chosen legend. Memes, reaction videos, and endless discussion threads circulated on Instagram and TikTok, drawing in not only devoted gospel fans, but also casual listeners who had never really followed gospel conversations before. Younger audiences largely rallied behind Fred Hammond, praising him for his push to innovate and modernize gospel. Many argued that the genre must evolve in order to stay relevant, especially now that streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube have become the primary way younger generations consume music. Fans insisted that Fred's approach opened gospel to places it had never reached before: clubs, festivals, even mainstream radio, without ever abandoning its spiritual foundation. Comments like, "Fred is saving gospel for the next generation," and "We need someone to bridge tradition with today's sound," flooded online feeds. On the other hand, Shirley Caesar's longtime supporters doubled down in her defense, celebrating her unwavering commitment to tradition. Older fans in particular felt her perspective was essential to preserving the sacredness of gospel's spiritual core. "Gospel is holy, it's not just entertainment," one fan tweeted. Another wrote, "Mother Shirley is protecting the word. Someone has to keep it pure." Many admired her boldness in standing against what they saw as a creeping secular influence in gospel music. The response from the industry was just as fierce. Gospel radio stations reported record engagement, with their phone lines and social media pages overflowing with questions and heated opinions about the debate. Some DJs even dedicated entire shows to unpacking the controversy, inviting pastors, choir directors, and gospel artists to share their perspectives. In churches and gospel forums alike, discussions raged over whether modern influences enhance the worship experience or compromise it. As the voices on both sides grew louder, the media spotlight intensified. Gospel magazines and entertainment outlets ran headlong at the clash, framing it as part of a broader generational divide. Some journalists even speculated that the outcome of this debate could influence future gospel award shows, collaborations, and festival lineups. Some began questioning whether this clash pointed to a deeper struggle between old and new leadership within gospel music circles, possibly reshaping who truly holds influence in the industry. Adding to the drama, insiders disclosed that both artists continued the conversation privately long after the event ended, while the public stage framed their back and forth as respectful. These behind-the-scenes discussions reportedly carried a sharper tone, exposing clear frustration on both sides. Some claimed Fred felt weighed down by tradition, while Shirley feared modern trends were threatening to dilute the spiritual foundation she has spent her entire life safeguarding. The controversy quickly ignited viral debates across countless platforms. YouTube creators broke down the exchange line by line, offering commentary and analysis to millions of viewers. Entire podcast episodes were dedicated to the subject, with hosts debating which side made the stronger case and what the argument meant for the future of gospel. Even analysts from the secular music world joined in, pointing out that this was just one example of a much bigger challenge across all music industries: how to balance innovation with tradition without alienating the core audience. And here's the surprising twist. Despite the heated opinions and divided fan bases, many insiders agreed on one thing: the debate has successfully thrust gospel music back into the spotlight. Younger audiences, many of whom had never engaged with the genre before, are now tuning in, streaming both Fred Hammond's contemporary hits and Shirley Caesar's classic anthems. Churches and gospel choirs have even reported a rise in attendance at worship events, thanks in part to the buzz generated by this conversation. But while public attention has reached an all-time high, there's another layer most people don't see behind the headlines. Some within the industry worry that the debate could spark long-term divisions in the gospel community. Will collaborations between traditional and contemporary artists become strained? Could future award nominations or festival bookings be shaped by this divide? Only time will reveal the answers. To grasp the true weight of Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar's debate, we have to look past the immediate clash of viewpoints and consider its broader impact on the gospel industry. This is not merely a generational disagreement, it's a crossroads moment, forcing artists, producers, and fans alike to confront the pressing question: what direction will gospel take in the decades ahead? Fred Hammond's perspective reflects a growing movement within contemporary gospel emphasizing innovation, crossover potential, and the fusion of timeless messages with modern sounds. His style resonates deeply with younger audiences who consume music differently than past generations. Social media, streaming platforms, and viral trends now shape how gospel reaches listeners. In today's culture, the ability of an artist to craft music that is both spiritually meaningful and culturally relevant is more important than ever. Fred represents this forward-moving wave of gospel music, capable of charting alongside secular hits while still preserving its message of faith. By contrast, Shirley Caesar's stance highlights the crucial need to protect gospel's sacred roots. She continually reminds the community that gospel is not just another form of entertainment, it is ministry, worship, and a living reflection of centuries of spiritual tradition. Her warnings underscore the danger of watering down gospel's message by blending it too heavily with secular styles. Her approach appeals strongly to older generations, church congregations, and believers who see gospel not as popular culture, but as a spiritual lifeline, something meant to remain set apart, holy and distinct. The debate, therefore, exposes a tension that many within the industry have quietly recognized for years: the constant struggle to balance innovation with tradition. If gospel leans too heavily into contemporary styles, it risks losing its core audience. But if it stays too traditional, it risks fading into cultural obscurity. Fred and Shirley's exchange brought this dilemma into sharp focus, igniting conversations that extend far beyond a single debate panel. Industry insiders suggest that this dialogue has already begun influencing production choices, collaborations, and even festival bookings. Younger gospel artists, inspired by Fred's perspective, are experimenting with new sounds, weaving in hip-hop, R&B, and electronic elements. At the same time, more traditional artists and choirs aligned with Shirley's vision are doubling down on live instrumentation, choir-driven arrangements, and lyrical richness. This dual movement reflects gospel's evolving identity and points toward a future where both approaches could coexist if balanced with care. Fan reactions highlight just how high the stakes are. Social media discussions reveal a generational divide. Younger listeners cheer on creative experimentation, while older audiences stand firm in defending gospel's purity. For the artists themselves, this isn't an abstract argument, it directly impacts album sales, radio airplay, streaming performance, and live opportunities. Producers are now watching closely, trying to figure out how to present gospel music in a way that appeals to both camps without alienating either side. And here's the suspenseful twist: some insiders believe this very debate could trigger a broader renaissance in gospel music. By forcing both artists and audiences to confront these issues, the genre may actually emerge more powerful, more diverse, and more influential than ever before. Imagine a gospel that stays spiritually anchored while also daring to push creative boundaries, music that thrives in churches, on streaming platforms, at festivals, and beyond. Fred and Shirley's exchange might well be the spark that sets this evolution in motion. Yet the discussion also raises weighty questions. Can gospel safeguard its sacred identity while embracing modern sounds? Will the next generation of artists follow Fred's lead, even at the risk of pushback from traditionalists? Or will the enduring influence of legends like Shirley Caesar ensure that the spiritual core never wavers? The answers are anything but simple. What is undeniable, though, is that gospel music stands at a crossroads. And thanks to Fred Hammond and Shirley Caesar, the conversation that will define its direction for years to come has already begun.